is that we can learn to minister to each other better. So although we're not directly in scripture today, we might be. That's up to Danielle. Our goal is to, I told her beforehand, we're going to pepper you with questions. We want to learn. We want to see how this affects us personally and those around us. And so today, well, I will hand it all over to Danielle. Danielle, if you need more time than what we have today, next week or whatever's needed, you just pass it on. Whatever you need is going to be yours.
Okay, it's just going to depend on questions. So we'll see how many questions y'all have. So
hey, the Old Testament reference you're looking for is Deuteronomy 6 verses 4 and 5.
Deuteronomy.
Art would know he was there.
It's the Shema. Yeah.
That is definitely a verse that I need to memorize along with the reference. So thank you, Amy, for that encouragement. Thank you.
I know that's a verse that I repeat to my ladies constantly. There are only 2 rules. These are your 2 rules. That's it. End of story. These are your 2 rules. Instead of all of the task lists that we make ourselves. So we talk about those 2 a whole lot. So there is going to be some scripture today, but hopefully not taken out of context too much. This is a training I've actually done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, but this is the first time I can weave scripture actually into it without hiding it anywhere. So I think my main training is going to be much, much better now because I was able to fully put it down on paper the way I want it to be, where I've always written it to where I can't put everything in I want. So now I'm going to go back and rewrite my other one. So thank you for that, Mark. I do have slides. Oh, wrong computer. I've got 2 computers going today to make this easy. And of course, not making it easy.
What's Kara?
Not on camera. I've got whoever's not on camera hidden so that
okay, there she is.
We can see. Everybody can see and read, I hope.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm illiterate.
Ha! Are you where you could see, Allison?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I really I took a step back, and a lot of the time when I'm talking to people about working with people that are neurodivergent, which covers ADHD, autism, ADHD, bipolar disorder, dyslexia, schizophrenia. There's a very, very long list, including being deaf. They're finding with more and more studies that even somebody who's deaf hits a lot of these things outside of just being hearing impaired. And that's a lot of people. And the church as a whole has been, I was looking up some new stats to see what the new stats are. Over 75% of the LGBTQIA plus whatever the other letters and all of that are expressed that they went that direction because they were hurt by church. 75%. And that is one group. And over, and Tara, you might need to correct me over there, over 60% of the LGBTQIA plus is neurodivergent. So that's also pretty terrifying that the church, and it's the people, not the church, are causing that much harm to people that they have access to. So these are things, and I took a poll of my Bible study ladies and Gina and a few other people this week. how many of us in church were wondering if we were the problem? And not because we didn't love Jesus and any of these things that are here. I'm not going to read through all of these things. Not because we didn't believe, but because we were told we were the problems. I have a list here of things that we'll get to here in a minute. I've got to move people away on this other screen. Aha, there. But I want to remind us, and I have told my ladies this so many times, for you were formed in my inward parts, you were knit together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. God made us the way we are. We aren't broken. We aren't mismade. We were made this way. And it is proven that neurodivergence is a genetic disorder. So it was something you were born with, not something that came about because of sin, sickness, things like that. Many neurodivergent people talk about hiding who they are, not hiding that they're gay or hiding that whatever, hiding their personality because they have been criticized for it so much in church. Getting up and wandering around, not being able to pray the way everybody else prays, not being able to read through the Bible the way somebody else does, not being able to process information as quickly as somebody else does. So many things. And questioning things, right, Tara? So I'm going to just stick to what ADHD, autism, and ADHD are in our context because Tara and I are both ADHD. Amy is ADHD. Husband over here is definitely neurodivergent on the spectrum. My son is ADHD. And I believe that Mark, you probably fit into the ADHD-ness of our world as well too. So what is ADHD? It's not an attention deficit. It's a difference in how your attention regulates. Some people struggle to focus. Other people can hyper-focus without a problem. And they tend to get hyper-focused on things that are really meaningful to them. And not remember to eat, drink, sleep, basic life necessities. Autism, they're finding more and more that it's not a lack of social ability or lack of empathy. They process information, and there's two separate spectrums of autism, and it's over processing information to the point where it's painful. Too much light is painful, too much sound is painful, the touch of your hair, skin, clothing can be painful, or somebody who needs a ton of touch, and we call that sensory defensive and sensory seeking, and that's the kid that's bouncing off the wall and hitting their head off the wall, wants deep touch, wants hugs, wants to wrestle, punch, hit, and autism has those two spectrums. And then you have the ADHD group of us that are both of those wirings together. And for those of us that are ADHD, we could swing wildly back and forth between ADHD stuff and autism stuff, and sometimes we're right down the middle. I tend to be more ADHD 99% of the time than I do autistic, but it depends on the day. It depends on what side my brain is winning today and which one's losing. So what is ADHD? Time blindness. As in, not just the person who's late for things, but they think something's going to take 5 minutes and it takes 10 hours. They think something's going to take 10 hours and it takes 2 seconds. And that time blindness issue causes them to not do things and to kind of procrastinate and things like that because they don't have a great sense of what something is going to take them, and they really, really struggle with that.
Hey, Danielle.
Yeah.
1 second. We're catching up with your notes.
Okay.
We're on 2.
I don't have the workbook open, so I can't have both open
Okay.
here.
No, we're catching up with you. We're on
Okay.
we're on number 2. Okay.
So time blindness can really affect showing up on time, the person that's always 15 minutes late, the person that's always an hour late, the person that, even if they do show up on time, is never put together. Because processing time, there's no internal regulation of time. This can affect sleep. A lot of ADHD people don't sleep on normal schedules because their body has no sense of time rhythms.
Just killed mine.
I'm sure you are with working nights and all of your doubles and triples and quadruples and all of that right now. And that's not easy. But the time blindness makes it really difficult to not feel overwhelmed by tasks and all of the things that we're supposed to do every day. Because it's really, really difficult to plan out your day and understand what you can and can't handle in a day. And it tends to cause a ton of anxiety for people. And then you've got the autistic side of that spectrum where time, this one over here, can tell me what time it is within 1 or 2 minutes without ever looking at a watch, a clock, not looking since we got out of bed in the morning. He always has like an extreme grasp on time. And we see a lot of, I have a couple autistic clients that can do that. And it always surprises the crap out of me because I have zero clue what time it is. And there's Jim coming in.
You can see it now. That's nice.
Morning, Jim.
Morning, how are you?
Good, good, good. We're doing a little bit different series today where Danielle's teaching on some people issues. It's something we've never done before. So
Awesome.
you'll find yourself right where you are here. She's jumping right back in.
So, object permanence. We all know that person that if you don't talk to them constantly, they forget that you exist.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. Out of sight, out of mind is a big thing. And that tends to drive our very organized people in our life insane because we like piles and we have stuff out and we don't like to put things away. We like things where they're visible to us at all times so that we remember they exist. And that could look like piles of clothes on the floor all the time. That can look like piles of books and papers and Post-it notes and pens everywhere. Because if we put things away, we forget they exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I say we, meaning me. I have a major issue with this. But it can be people in relationships too, where they can look like they don't care about somebody. It really isn't that. It's because out of sight, out of mind. And it's not done on purpose. It's not a sign of disrespect or that they don't love you or anything like that. They literally forget.
I didn't know that was a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying, I've been telling people I have object permanence with people.
Mm-hmm. A lot of us do. And I actually, in order for me to remember to do all of the and reach out to all the people I need to reach out to as part of my job, I had somebody get really offended at me once because they saw my calendar and it said message and it had their name next to it. And I have them on my calendar regularly because I will forget.
Second page. See, these are all on the second page. Okay. Okay.
Object permanence can also cause things like face blindness for a lot of ADHDers. Oh, do I know that? Like somebody will come up, talk to you for 20 minutes and they'll walk away and they'll look at their partner and go, did I know that person? Do I know who that is? And they're like, yeah, that's your aunt so-and-so. Really? That happens a lot for people with ADHD is that they totally forget what somebody looks like. I can remember a voice, but I don't remember a face. I'm like, man, I know that person, but I don't recognize them. Where like art is the exact opposite. And you can play those goofy games on YouTube where like you see just a famous person's eyes and you try to figure out who they are. Art, you get them right 99% of the time. I can see their whole face and not know who they are. RSD, which is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And this one is more because of trauma that an ADHD person or an autistic person has experienced in life around a situation. And you start perceiving rejection before it happens. Or perceiving rejection on a conversation that you had 6 years ago and it just came up and now you're thinking about it over and over again and you think that person hates you for life because you told the wrong joke or didn't laugh at their joke or said the wrong thing and I see Amy and Tara shaking their heads. This RSD is a really, and it can be crippling for a lot of people who are neurodivergent. But again, this one comes back to trauma that they've experienced. If they've heard that they're too loud, too much, too dumb, too lazy, too whatever, if something gets mentioned in a conversation that can trigger one of those things that they have had some issues with in the past, it brings all of those things up. And with neurodivergence, emotions tend to be on 11 instead of 2 or 3, and you can go from -10 to 11 in 1.5 seconds and be overwhelmed with that and get stuck in that. I'll have
Got a
time.
question.
Yeah.
Amy, Tara, I'm saying this for us three at least. How does knowing how you're wired help you?
So that's an interesting question for me because I think, for a lot of us, like it's an ongoing learning process. You learn different things each day of like, oh, this isn't what's best suited for my brain. This is. But I think knowing the way that we're wired helps to reduce the amount of shame that we feel because, like Danielle said, like a lot of times we're told that we're too much, we're too talkative, we're too this, we're too that. So being able to put an explanation to, oh, there's a pile of clothes on my bedroom floor, not because I'm lazy or unmotivated, but just like Danielle said, like it's object permanence, you know? So I think for me, knowing how I'm wired really helps me to be able to communicate more effectively what I need and what I don't need.
What do you think, Amy?
And for me, I'm still learning that all the time. I don't think that that's ever something that you ever stop learning, but it, like Tara said, it helps um,
I'll move it later.
give that explanation, and it helps to. It's not an excuse, surrounding myself with people that understand that has been helpful because then I'm able to just people that understand how that is just get you right away and you don't have that shame or you don't have and you can actually work through things because sometimes I verbally like need to talk about it in order to process, so it's just helpful all around.
Well, that leads me to part two is how do we deal with people? What's our mode for dealing with people? And probably I assume that we're going to be getting into it, but I think personally, I just will go right over people's heads. That's my personality, and not in a bad way. I don't have time for you if you don't understand who I am. For instance, if I walk into an environment that's playing a game, any kind of game that's non-real, I have no interest whatsoever, and I'm looking for a way to get out of there. I've got no reason. This is a total waste of life, and it could be my best friends, could be my wife. It doesn't matter. I've got no need for it.
To what?
It's too crowded. Let's sit down here.
So, you
I'd
know,
like that.
how
Here's right
so
here.
I tend to just leave people alone, and let them live their whole lives. And I don't really feel bad about that. So how about you guys? How does knowing who you are, how do you interact with the world around you, especially those that you have to deal with? You know, a spouse, family, and close friends, work situations, things like that.
Community is something that is very important to the neurodivergent world, and finding people that understand you makes it easier when you're working with or talking to people that don't understand you, because it's like you have a safe space, and then I call it going out into the wild. So it's like then when I go out into the wild and somebody, doesn't understand me, or, tells me that I'm asking too many questions, I can kind of write it off as like, well, you don't understand. And I used to take it really, really personally, and that's where the rejection sensitivity would really come in. But now, like, having a safe, supportive space helps to counteract, a lot of the shame and the judgment, that I feel on a daily basis. And there's been times that I've had to tell coworkers, look, like, if I didn't answer your text, it's not because I didn't want to. It's because I read it and then I went on to something else, and out of sight, out of mind, So I feel like sometimes it's a lot of explaining ourselves, which also gets exhausting, because we shouldn't have to explain why we are the way we are. But with human behavior, sometimes we just have to, so that people understand. And tying it into the church, rejection sensitivity and perceived rejection, I think, is one of the biggest things that leads neurodivergent people away from the church. I know it's what did me in my past, because every time I'd ask a question, it was, oh, you're being disobedient. Oh, you're being too loud. You're being too fidgety. You need to sit still. You can't stand up. You can't be twirling your hair. You can't be doing this. You can't be doing that. But those were all things that I needed. And the church didn't understand that. So I think for a lot of people too, the church can cause a lot of feelings of rejection, because if they do ask questions, they're looked at a certain way.
What do you think, Amy? Do you have an answer to that? How do you relate to those around your community, knowing who you are and how you function, how you're wired?
Um, I think having surrounded myself with, or trying to surround myself more with a community like that, um, whether it be through, here it's, or um, through the other group, or through coworkers who all are the same way. It's been kind of a changing year for that, because I have made more friends or gotten closer to people because of just using this, um, like I was saying earlier, being able to talk about things and being able to relate to people and that do understand, so that when they don't understand you, you're just like, okay, and go back to the people that do understand you, and not, feel terribly bad. And because there is someone there that does understand, and then you don't have to feel so bad for the people that, or when you're around the people that don't understand you. Um, so I don't know. Sorry, thought just went.
Yeah. No, it's neat to hear how everybody responds. From another aspect, I think I'm somewhere probably more in the middle. Art, I know you would say you're just gone. You know, you just, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know you. You don't have time for anybody that doesn't understand who you are and how you're wired. You're moving on. You're gone. Am I right?
Yeah, for the most part, it's true. And I don't think that I don't think that it's relegated specifically to people that don't understand me. It's I deal in concepts and I deal in I'm very thoughtful. I'm very, in my mind with things. And so when I am trying to, talk to somebody, work with somebody, help somebody out, explain things, something like that, I tell people all the time, this comes up in pool because I coach people a lot shooting pool. Um, and you're in a match and there's a timeout and you coach somebody how to do something or what they need to do, and then you step back from the table and they execute it, and it's like, did they hear a word that I said? Because they did exactly the opposite of everything that I just said, and they wrecked everything. And my thing that I always say is, you can explain anything to anybody, but you can't understand it for them. And that's kind of a mindset that I have, and I know I'm kind of drawing it out a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of a mindset that I have. So when I come up against somebody that I feel like I'm just talking at them and their eyes are glazing over, it's like, yeah, never mind, and I just move on. I wanna talk to people who, well, like we all do. You want to talk to people that are similar to how you are, and that you can, carry on meaningful conversation with, and have some commonality. And so I tend to gravitate toward people that are more intellectual and people uh, that I just kind of think are just going through life and just on autopilot doing their thing. I don't really have time for those people.
Right, 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 right. So I hope I know we're very early in this, and Danielle, I'm sorry for taking this amount of time, but the application for the church is glaring for us, realizing that we can walk right over the top of people and we can attribute it to all these outward signs, and we're missing the people.
Mhm.
How dare we as a church walk over the top of people? Rhonda, I think of you in my life, things that we're going through. It's like we're looking at the objects or the symptoms instead of the people. And so it's so easy to look and say, because we don't understand. It's like, I might not understand you, Amy. I'm just using you as an illustration, but it should be my goal to learn to understand. Ask a probing question, shut up, listen, let you speak your heart and get to know you. Maybe we can connect, maybe we won't. I don't know. And so again, just using you as an illustration, not in particular. Um, so thank
I
you,
also,
Daniel.
I also don't think I was totally understanding everything you were saying earlier, but I was like thinking while you were talking that when it has to relate with like the church, I still on an everyday feel like every day, whether it be church or work or stuff, is that I still deal with like that people pleasing chameleon type of thing where you're, you know, analyzing the situation. You walk into a room, how this person is going to handle me, how is this person going to relate to me, how am I going to relate to them, what are they like, are they going to be accepting, are they going to be like, and then are they speaking over my head, are they, how are they relating to me, and then shutting down because okay, well, they're not being accepting, they're not being this, they're not giving me the time to sometimes get a thought out, or, again, it might just be something I'm not interested in, um, or just a lot of different things. Doesn't I got too many like different situations like coming through, but
Sure. Sure.
um, it's when that happens in a church setting, it just makes it even harder. So.
And
And
as a gathering, it would be my desire. Now, I understand we're under the curse, we're fallen, and we're imperfect. We admit that. That's our motto. That's what we say. Hello, we are the gathering. We are messed up people. Okay, that's our motto. But we want to head and increase our ability to be a place where you don't have to do that. We accept you for who you are, how you are, you know? And not just Amy, all of us. I mean, we're a complete diverse group of people. But as the body of Christ, we're supposed to be a safe place. We're supposed to be. And so heading towards that place where we don't even need those coping skills. Now, we're still going to, because we're imperfect. But hopefully, increasingly, we are a safer and better place. And that's why we're doing this today, and so that we get to learn each other and realize, hey, a large percentage of us are dealing with some of these things. It's how we're wired. Let's learn who we are and learn how to function with each other.
And Mark, one of the things that, I want to add to that is, I mean, I think, the fact that Danielle is doing this today, I think just speaks volumes of, where the gathering is in terms of, acceptance. And, you know, even though we're wired to, like Amy said, have that kind of like chameleon, like, scanning our surroundings, analyzing, sometimes over analyzing everything. One of the things that I can say, and I've said this to Danielle, is, being here, like, I do truly feel accepted. I've never been ridiculed for asking questions or, logging on at 10:04. Those are the types of things that, you know, in previous experiences at a church, like I did get ridiculed for. So I do want to also state that I do feel like there is a lot more acceptance here than what I've had in the past, which is why I keep coming back.
To the glory
Agreed.
of God, that's for sure. Danielle, please.
I want to add something in. I think that, well, in my personal opinion, I think that something that's gone terribly wrong in the church as a whole is that it's become institutionalized. Um, and I think if you look at the New Testament church, the original model for churches was small gatherings of people that, you know, you can only get to know so many people. You can only have an inner circle of friends and connections that's so big, you know. And so when you get into a large institutionalized thing that is the church, like a mega church, for example, or anything even nearing that, most congregational churches, I think that it's really easy to get quickly to a point where it becomes impersonal and it's a machine that's chugging along. And whenever you have an institutionalized machine that's chugging along, anything that's on the fringe gets clipped off or pushed back into the herd. And so if you have this thing that this is how we do things and this is how it operates, and you're sitting on the edge of it, you either need to get in line or get out. It's like you have to be part of the group or you're not. And I think that the beauty of having a small group like what we have, not to say that we're perfect and not to say that this is not valuable, because I think for the reasons that we've all mentioned, this is really valuable to be doing this today. But I think that we are much less in contradiction with being able to respond to these things and be accepting than an organized church, because we don't have that thing where there's a common drive that everybody is in a group and you have to either get in or get out. And I think that is a horrible thing that's happened to the church. If churches around the world had stayed more small groups of tighter knit groups of people that are able to work in each other's lives and be there, as support for each other and with the common goal of seeing each other grow in your spiritual walk and helping with personal problems, of life and all that stuff. I think that the church would be in a much better place. And so I think that probably in a lot of countries that I don't know because we're in America, we're in the West, and we see how things have been done here. I think in a lot of the rest of the world, it's probably much closer to the original model than what we have here. Certainly in third world countries, I think that that's the case, that you have much more small church groups. And then, but then that begs the question of how do you have impact as the church if everything is 5 people here, 10 people there, stuff like that. And I think that ideally it would be a situation where different church groups were in connection with each other and could do larger scale things together as outreaches. But that's even if it's necessary. Because if really every neighborhood had its own group of people that got together and were that little piece of the body and they were ministering to their neighborhood, then everything would be covered and would we really even need anything bigger? So I think that all this stuff that we're seeing that people have been hurt by the church is a failure of the church because of its size and the fact that it's become.
And I think part of that too is, and I know that Danielle, I know we're on the ADHD, part of this right now, but a lot of the larger churches are sensory nightmares. Like when we're talking about, scanning people and analyzing people's body language and behavior and all the different sights and sounds and smells and, super loud music and chairs that are uncomfortable, like that is not neurodivergent friendly for a lot of people. So then your body goes into a state of chaos when you're trying to be at peace.
Well, man, it's a good thing you didn't come to church with us in Congo then.
Oh, good.
You want to talk about noises and sights and smells and
Yeah.
and uncomfortable chairs. I forgot that one. Yeah.
Well, uncomfortable chairs for me is just because everything bruises me. Danielle knows that.
For anybody that doesn't know, Tara is mega, 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 mega skinny. So sitting anywhere for more than 5 minutes bruises her.
She needs a cushion because she hasn't got any. Yeah, got any.
Yeah, so like the wooden church pews, like I'd leave on Sundays with bruises. And that's also part, of the EDS, is that bruising easily, which is also common. Yeah.
So take note, Mark, if Tara ever comes and we ever meet up there.
We need a pillow for Tara to sit on.
We do what we need to do. Rhonda, you got something?
I don't know if I can make it right, if somebody can put the words together for me, because I can't do it, but I'm just looking through this stuff here and thinking through my past and stuff, and it's not just the church rejection and all those other things. So that someone that's been physically, sexually, emotionally abused, a lot of this stuff you would have too without being the whole package. So I'm just saying, you don't have to have all of that and be labeled ADHD or autism or ADD or whatever it is, ABCD, to have those things, to know where people are coming from, and that you have to work through a lot of stuff. We've had to work through a lot of stuff in our own lives because of where I've come from. So just saying that people are they're gonna have 1 and 5 and 2, but not necessarily be ADHD. Do you know what I mean? But we're gonna see those characteristics, walking into a room and not knowing why, or that rejection sensitivity stuff. And I know what you guys are talking about. You go into a room and you're scanning who's safe, who's not safe, how do I get out of here if I have to, all those kind of things, but not necessarily that whole package.
Yeah.
Isn't it, Danielle, what you were saying when we first started, that I guess I'm going to reword it using Rhonda's language, is that some of this stuff is the consequences for other things that are going on in your life.
Absolutely. RSD it's trauma based. what has somebody said, what has somebody done, physical, spiritual, sexual, whatever in your past that's going to cause you to walk into a situation with those colored glasses already on.
It's just a hypersensitivity.
Yeah.
Because of past experience.
Yep. So another one, I'm gonna hit the hyper focus. I put this in here because this is a big deal for those that are ADHD neurodivergent. But it doesn't necessarily, can it affect conversations at church? Yes. Because you'll get, and one of the best ways to illustrate this is you get that little boy who's just learning about dinosaurs, and that is the only thing that you are going to hear from that child for months and months and months. It is their hyper focus. Neurodivergent adults do that. Currently, for me, it's Claude, which none of y'all, except for Tara, nobody else knows what that is, and that's fine.
I know what it is.
If you don't restart, I couldn't hear you.
Well, can you say it again? Some of us didn't hear you.
So for me, my hyper focus recently is Claude. The rest of you aren't going to know what that is. It's AI. Don't worry about it. But that's all I'm talking about. It's everything I do. But hyper focus happens in batches, and then can completely and totally disappear for an ADHDer. Crafts. A lot of women will get into a craft and buy every single thing that goes with the craft and do all of the things and then get bored with it and never touch it again. Hyper focus on items. And like I said, that 6-year-old little boy is a really good illustration because you know that kid that got into dinosaurs and is never going to shut up about it. And you see him coming and you're like, oh gosh.
My 7-year-old, as I woke up this morning to him telling me that the Gallimimus is faster than a school bus. Yes.
Yeah.
So that was not a huge one in a church situation, but it does affect ADHDers, neurodivergent people a lot. So executive dysfunction is a big thing that does affect a lot of us, and it affects our relationship with God. Because we know what we are supposed to do, we know what we should do, and there's a lot of shouldas. We've been told by the church that we are supposed to read our Bible for 30 minutes every day, and you have to do it this, and you have to sit down, and you have to pray every single day, and this is what prayer looks like. And we have these long legalistic lists that we have been told, and then we feel like when we're unable to start tasks and unable to get the focus in to do these things, it starts that shame spiral for a lot of us because we're unable to do things the way that the church tells us that we should be doing them.
Now, I hope at this point that everybody in this group is free from feeling that obligation being put under law of legalistic things that they have to do.
But there's a lot of untwisting, and like,
Oh, right, but
Amy and I have talked about it, Tara and I have talked about it, Gina, which everybody knows Gina here, except for Amy, I think. Allison probably doesn't either. Gina joined us for a little while, and she's a very good friend of mine. And Gina lives under that legalism, like, heavily.
but that is her bent.
Yeah, that
She is very much rules.
She
so.
So it was easy for her to get dragged into that. And then she comes to me daily. Well, I was only able to read my Bible for 5 minutes today. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always encouraging her. That's amazing. You spent 5 minutes in God's word today. That's awesome. With a toddler and a 5-year-old and craziness, amazing. And we were talking the other day about prayer. And for her, she's like, I know I should be praying and I just can't do it. And we've had this discussion in our Bible study so many times. Well, what does prayer look like? And there's a lot of executive dysfunction when it comes to prayer because there is this church illustration that prayer looks like sitting down silently and talking to God and having these really deep intellectual conversations with God to pray. And Amy, I think it was you that I said, Well, did you say it out loud? Did you tell God that, hey, please pray for Rebecca today? And did you know that was good enough? Did you know that that's okay? That that's all your prayer could be? I don't pray in words at all. I listen to worship music and songs come to mind when I'm praying for each of my women, and I don't pray in a traditional way at all. And sometimes my prayer is thinking of somebody for 2 seconds and say, hey, God, I was just thinking about her. That was it.
So for these people, grace is going to be a hard thing to get a hold of. In one hand, we can be with art, and I could write a thesis on what grace is all about, and I understand it. But on the other hand, I'm there with Tara saying, you know what, I'm struggling, and I'm continuing this battle, and I can hear this with all of the ADHD people who you're still wired to get your significance about what you do, and you're told by the world your significance is by what you do. But so in your mind you understand grace, but on the other hand, there's a battle going on um to be free in grace.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Exactly. Sorry.
Got ya.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it for sure is a daily internal battle.
Mhm.
You know, even giving ourselves grace.
Now, Rhonda is the testimony of dealing with one of these type of issues, a different issue altogether with her, and that's up to her if she wants to share it.
Which issue?
Yeah, which issue? Uh, but she dealt with that her entire life, and it was just, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago that God just dealt with it, and it's done.
Gone.
And so there's help, and if the struggle goes on all of our lives, it goes on all of our lives. The fact that we're struggling, the fact that we're fighting means we have life. We are God's children. If we weren't, we wouldn't care. And so, but the point I was making, we can get deliverance, but if we don't, the day is coming when we will be delivered completely. That's our hope of Christ's return, when he makes everything right. And so that's why we love Christ. Another reason why we love Christ is because he will bring us freedom from all of these things that were messed up by the curse and the fall and sin and death and
Mhm.
ADHD.
And on the topic of prayer, I texted Danielle a couple weeks ago, when I was really struggling with the upcoming anniversary, of my brother's passing, and it was really hitting me hard. And, I was talking to God in my head, and, I had just said, like, just give me a sign. Like, I need some reassurance here. And then shortly after, a song came on from Finding Dory, which was his favorite, and then the next song that came on shuffle was Heaven, and then there was another song that came on after that I can't remember, but that like non-traditional way of prayer, is really helpful because we all have our own ways of communicating, of processing, and it's having a relationship with God. You does it matter if you're sitting in a church pew, with your eyes closed and your hands folded? To me, no. Like, it's yours. It's your relationship. And so if it's worship music, if it's talking out loud, if it's in your head, if it's writing it down, like all of those are also ways that a lot of us neurodivergent individuals adapt to that because it's what we need. It's how our brains are wired. And growing up in a Roman Catholic church where you had to go to confession and then sit down in a church pew with a rosary, and you were told, okay, do 5 Our Fathers, 10 Hail Marys. I probably sat for an hour doing them because I would lose count. and then start all over because it was like if I didn't do these, I was going to hell. So,
Well, that brings in the
And
next
you,
working
and
memory.
you wonder why you struggle with grace.
Yeah, exactly. So the other one here that I'm not going to really get into, working memory, walking into the room and totally forgetting why, walking around the house looking for your phone when it's in your hand, I think all of us know what that is. You don't have to be ADHD for that, but those of us that are ADHD do it 50, 60 times a day versus the average person that does it a couple times a week. Emotional intensity, and this goes with there's a reason why it's directly across from RSD. Emotions tend to be on, like I said, 11. Probably nobody other than my husband gets that reference. Emotional intensity is never slowly getting more upset or slowly getting more angry or slowly being more depressed or whatever. It's you go from 0 to 60 in very, very, very quickly, and it's felt. It's painful. Allison, I didn't hear what you said.
I said it is exhausting.
It is. It is. Because it's not just emotions. There's usually physical pain that goes with those emotions. A lot of us, when we have a particularly emotional thing happen, end up physically ill afterwards. There's some of us that end up with migraines. Some people that end up with like flu symptoms. Some people who will sleep for like 6, 7 hours straight after emotional intensity hits.
More than a day.
Or more.
sometimes.
Yeah. It can be really, really intense for a lot of people on the spectrum. And RSD triggers it a lot. And we were talking about how the church triggers RSD a ton. And that's just really exhausting for a lot of people. Even attending church causes that emotional intensity issue. And then you end up in this cycle every single week.
I call it the ice bucket challenge thing. 1 minute I'm standing there, I'm absolutely fine. Next minute I am soaking hot, ripping mad. And somebody dumped that bucket on my head, whatever that would be. And it's like, bam, no in between.
And then when these things all pile up on top of each other, forgetting the basics, eating, sleeping, drinking, taking our medications are the things that keep us able to function. Everything goes out the window.
Why does that happen?
Why does that happen? Your body is overwhelmed with the other 9,000 things that you're doing that you just forget the basics.
In other words, it's a coping skill for your body.
Yep. It's your body shutting processes down.
and it could also be like the hyper focus, like, oh, I'm not going to get up to go to the bathroom, or I'm not going to go eat until I finish this thing. And then 6 hours later, 8 hours later, you've been knee deep in a project, never took your morning meds, your afternoon meds, didn't eat breakfast, haven't gone to the bathroom. So all of it.
Like when I'm at work, I'm like, I can do this after I do this because then I feel like I've earned it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is another issue.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling like we have to earn basic necessities. That is and I learned something this week. I was talking to a counterpart from the UK, and that is apparently very uniquely American thing, having to earn our basic necessities.
Yeah. See that?
That blew my mind, and it's still like I'm still like, huh.
Because America has a very, very strong cultural focus on work and productivity, much more so than
other
even
countries.
European.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that, but still the earning, like the forgetting the basics for most ADHDers, that's not something that is in their DSM that they use in the UK and in Europe because that is not a thing.
But I bet in Japan it is.
Yes, it is in Japan. But you want to know how many people in Japan get diagnosed with ADHD? 1 in 10,000.
It's because their food. Yeah. Anyway.
So that's another discussion.
Yeah.
So autism, sensory overwhelm. So for autism specifically, sensory overwhelm can be everything or nothing. There's nothing that puts them in sensitivity overwhelm. It's sensory defensive, sensory seeking. Somebody who is sensory defensive, everything can bother them. Every smell, every sight, things too bright, things not bright enough, every little type of sound, types of clothing. I raised a kid that was on sensory overwhelm all the time, and it was horrible as an infant because everything made him cry. Everything made him cry. And it took us a while to learn that there was one outfit that he could wear that didn't make him cry. And he did not want to be held. We couldn't hold him to feed him because he did not want to be held. And for adults sitting in church, the old lady's perfume or hairspray smell behind you, the flickering fluorescent lights in a church, they drive me insane.
Yeah, the old lady behind you.
Yeah.
But ahead of me.
Sorry, it was an inside joke.
But that's exhausting. Having to try to keep yourself from reacting to sensory overwhelm can be very exhausting for somebody. Social exhaustion, that RSD piece that we talked about for ADHD, social exhaustion for somebody with autism is, oh yeah, I'm supposed to look somebody in the eye. I'm supposed to look at them when I'm talking to them. I'm supposed to actually respond to them when they're talking to me, even if I think they're talking about stupid and I don't want to. How am I supposed to talk to this person? Oh yeah, is that a joke? Should I laugh at that? That's mentally exhausting for somebody with autism. And they tend to be mentally exhausted a whole lot. And that masking fatigue, trying to act normal, that's exhausting. That special interest, same thing as hyperfocus. Autistic adults do not. I have an autistic adult. She's a hairdresser who is into mechanical engineering, and I work with her, but the first 30 minutes of a coaching call with her are we talking about whatever she learned this week in mechanical engineering, because if she doesn't get it out, I can't have a conversation with her about anything else.
But she's a hairdresser.
But she's a hairdresser.
Why doesn't she just become a mechanical engineer? They make more money.
Because she's not allowed to. That was a thing that she was allowed to do in her family. It's an acceptable job for a woman to be a hairdresser. Being an engineer is not. So she's not allowed to.
In this day and age, it's acceptable, isn't it?
So if your family said,
Oh.
your fault in circles where your family is making decisions, where you group think, then you don't have that choice that most of us as Western people have of saying, hey, I want to do something different. And I want to be a ballerina. Now my family would look funny at me,
Because
but
you walk around like an elephant.
We'd let you.
you would see they would let me. But in some families, the group think would say, no, Allison, you can't do that. And you would say, oh, you're right.
Mhm. And that would also feed into the rejection sensitivity of if I do this, I'm going to be rejected by my family. And even though I want to do this, this is going to cause this intense amount of dysregulation, rejection. I don't want to feel that. So I'd rather suck it up and do this because this is what they approve of than the opposite.
And for me, as a kid, I grew up here in the US. I wasn't allowed to like the things I wanted to like. I loved geeky things. I loved Star Wars. I loved I loved all of the very, very geeky things that a girl isn't supposed to like. So I wasn't allowed to do those things a lot because it wasn't acceptable. And the church does that to women, especially. The very legalistic church does that to women, especially.
And you weren't allowed to have anything that was purple either.
I wasn't allowed to have anything that was purple.
Oh gosh.
So that's why she's still making up for it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Making up for it.
Yeah.
I could think people have an extreme need for routine and don't mess with the routine down to they will eat the same exact thing for every breakfast. They always eat the same exact thing in the same exact order on the same exact plate with the same exact fork. Like their need for routine can be pretty extreme and it can be crippling to the point of OCD for some of them. Literal interpretation, what you say is what they hear, not anything other than the first meaning of the dictionary. It took us a long time to get Michael to understand sarcasm jokes, things like that.
Sometimes I have to ask, are you being sarcastic or you mean that for real?
So you really mean that when you ask that?
Yeah.
Really? So something internally can't
Well, I mean,
differentiate.
sometimes you can tell when somebody's being obviously sarcastic,
Right.
but sometimes you get like, are you being sarcastic? Are you being real?
Because you need to know how to respond.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, Allison, I'll make it real easy for you. If I'm talking, I'm being sarcastic.
Absolutely.
That works coming out of his mouth is sarcasm.
Meltdowns and shutdowns. We think of little kids having a temper tantrum in the store. Somebody who's autistic can be having an internal meltdown that will cause them to not be able to deal with sensory things even more, you can tell they're struggling and they're just ready to shut down and fall apart. It doesn't necessarily look like a tantrum, but it can be full-on meltdowns. Now with an autistic child, it can look like a tantrum. It can look like destructive behavior. It can look like them just seeming very defiant, but they're having a meltdown because they're sensory overwhelmed or social overwhelmed or something going on. And
How might that look like in an adult in a church situation or even a relational situation?
Somebody walking away from a conversation mid-conversation because they just can't handle it anymore. Somebody not all there.
Facing
You're
out.
Yeah, kind of like zoning out. That can be an internal meltdown.
Yeah, I think that adults typically have better coping skills than children, so it doesn't
Yeah.
show as visibly. It doesn't mean that they're not still dealing with it. They just have ways of keeping it
They learn what works for them.
under wraps.
Sure.
It can look like tics. Do you know what I mean when I say tics? They could be blinking rapidly a lot. They could be picking at their fingers, picking at their skin, scratching a lot, just shrugging. Like that can be somebody on the verge of meltdown.
Oh.
Those are actually pretty common. I know I'll start going like this a lot when I'm ready to.
I start itching.
Mm-hmm. Itching is a very common one.
I'll itch myself red.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a meltdown or a shutdown is actually trying to shove away every bit of sensory stuff that's bothering them. In essence.
Yep.
Well, and if you think about it, Priscilla, if you get overloaded, then that means your tolerance becomes zero. And so at that point, it's every bit of sensory intake, not just.
Right. So a meltdown is really a withdrawal, almost a mental withdrawal from everything happening.
It's the thing that happens before the complete and total withdrawal.
Okay.
I can't help but thinking through all of this is a personal body's response trying to find homeostasis
Mhm.
in life. And that's
Absolutely.
what all of this is talking about. It's everybody's taking in all of the things that we've been talking about. Everybody does. But how you deal with it, your body wants to be comfortable, wants to be balanced. That's homeostasis is. It wants to be balanced in what's going on. If you keep pushing against that, you're gonna cope until your body can't cope, and then you start. What's the two words? Um, it's either
Fight, flight.
no, it's either where you're able to hold ground or you're gonna lose ground altogether.
Fight or flight.
No, it's coping. One's coping and one is non-coping. It's where you're losing the battle, and at the end, if you keep going in that direction, your body has to, using the same words, it's going to shut down because it's lost ground. Homeostasis has gone out the window. Interesting.
Now we're going to hit this, and this is the thing that affects Tara and I the most. So the internal contradiction of ADHD, I'm spastic and disorganized and crazy and all of that, but I want routine and I want it to always be the same. And our brains are actually fighting against both. Our brains themselves are fighting against that all of the time. And Art knows that I will go through a period of time where I will clean everything, get everything hyper organized and super organized. It never lasts very long because the ADHD takes over. And then I'm crazy, disaster. The organized part of me only happens like once, maybe twice a year. But the rest of the time, I'm crazy, ADHD, disorganized with piles everywhere. But there's a shame spiral. There's a lot of shame and frustration that goes with that. Whole lot. And where that craving routine, craving novelty, craving or living in chaos versus craving control over everything really makes it very, very difficult in your walk with God, because I'll go through a period, and I go through this, and I've learned to accept this about myself, where I will study for hours every day, and I'll be in the Word for hours every day, and I'm doing a ton of study, and then I won't touch it for a few months. But I'm ignoring something else when I am deep in the study. And when I'm not doing the study, I feel horrible that I'm not doing the thing that I was able to do a few weeks ago and I could hyper focus on. Autistic people love rules. Like, love rules, love routine, love structure, want all of that stuff. ADHD people don't like rules, and we tend to like to break them. When you're ADHD, you know the rules, and we're actually the ones that are really, really good at getting around all of them. Mm-hmm. We will find every way around a rule that we possibly can, and maybe not fully break them either. Even we get very, very good at that.
Yeah, finding the loopholes.
End it before it breaks.
Knowing time anxiety and time blindness, we have so much anxiety about being late, but are so bad at organizing our time that it causes a lot of meltdown. That causes a lot of meltdowns for a lot of people with ADHD. That is not, time anxiety is not, no, that's not true. I do have anxiety about time. Like, if you're not where you should be exactly at the right time, I get very frustrated with Art because he'll be at 9 o'clock, he'll still be in his office looking at his computer.
No, that's at 8:59, and then at
Sorry.
9 o'clock I'm here. But if I'm not here 10 minutes early, you can't handle that because in your mind, for how you process, you need to be early because you can't track time. So you must make sure you're early. And I know what second it is in my mind, so I don't need to worry about being early, because when I go somewhere, I know exactly how many minutes it's going to take me to get somewhere, and I'm on time every
It
time.
drives me
And when
insane.
people, when I show up at somebody's house, they're like, man, I can set my watch by you. Yeah, you could, because I'm that accurate. Yeah.
But you
And then
can't
there's
do
the thing of like you plan out your day or you plan out, like, okay, I need to leave the house by 8:46 because it takes me exactly 14 minutes, to get where I need to go. And then you get stuck behind a school bus or, something's wrong with your car on the way. And then it starts to spiral.
now you're gonna be late.
I didn't hear what you said, Allison.
Because now you're gonna be late because you got stuck behind farm equipment or you got stuck behind a bus, like Tara said.
And I actually get really paranoid about that. So I'll leave 45 minutes before I need to be somewhere when it only takes me 15 minutes to get there. Like I get that anxious about things. Drives her crazy.
I
Right.
leave
If
45
it
minutes.
takes, yeah, if it takes me 15 minutes, I'll leave
Right.
when I've got 14 minutes left because I know I can make up that minute. And then when I get stuck behind the bus, then I get really, really mad because some idiot is in my way and blocking
Yes.
me from doing the thing that I need to do.
Yes. And then like Danielle was talking about, where it's like some days it's more ADHD, some days it's more autism, some days it's in the middle. There are days where it's like I will leave, 30 minutes ahead of time instead of, counting it down to the minute. But
Then it's not
often,
frustrated enough that I don't want to get up and go.
well,
Yeah,
and
I'm-
often if I wake up super early and I don't have to be somewhere, it's like, oh, I've got plenty of time, and the next thing you know, it's like, where did this hour and a half go? Now I
Gone.
am not leaving super early. Now I'm cutting it super close and hopefully I can make up that 2 minutes.
I lose time a lot. I lose time a whole lot. I have timers for everything. Like for every meeting, I set a timer 10 minutes before. Like I do have a lot of time anxiety. Hyper focus and paralysis. I can lock in on one thing. If I like doing the task, I can hyper focus. I can get that done. I'm probably going to get it done in half the time that I set for it. But if I don't like to do the task, that task is going to take me 12 hours. A big thing for those of us that are ADHD is burnout. Is way worse, and we see this, like Tara and I see this a lot in what we do, that we're dealing with a lot of burnout ADHD women to the point of they now know that over 95% of people with autoimmune disorders are ADHD. We burn ourselves into autoimmune disorders. And they have proven that very, very few autoimmune disorders are genetic, and they are from internally damaging your body to the point that it starts attacking itself.
Can you explain what that means, masking plus executive dysfunction at once?
Masking is trying to act like everybody else in the room, trying to not ask the questions that we want to ask, trying to not roll our eyes at the person being a moron, trying to not have a fit that our clothes are bothering us and our hair is bothering us and whatever. That's masking. Executive dysfunction is, as I had on the last screen,
Well, yeah, and
knowing what to do and unable to start it. So the combination of those things, you bring those things together, it causes our bodies to shut down. We get bored and overwhelmed all at the same time by being bored. I don't handle being bored or doing one task at a time very well. I drive Art crazy because we'll be watching a movie and I am always doing something else on my phone too, because I cannot just watch a movie. That is not stimulating for me ever.
but then you can never remember what goes on in a movie, and it's like, well, how could you? You weren't paying any attention. You didn't make your phone notes.
There's that too. But that bored and overwhelmed problem also adds to that burnout. And because we're not giving our bodies the full rest that it needs, because we don't handle silence and being bored and all of those things very well. And then we want connection and we want solitude all at the same time. So we need alone time to recharge, but we want to go all in. And when we're all in with a group of people, we are all in. All of our energy is spent on being with a group of people if we like them. And if we don't like them and it's not a good situation, then all of our energy is spent on that masking and trying to deal with the sensory overwhelm and all of those things all at the same time. And then the self-awareness of being ADHD and knowing what we should do, but unable to make ourselves do it is also very exhausting and frustrating and causes a lot of shame and causes a lot of anger with ourselves, things like that. Anything to add, Tara? Anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered it pretty thoroughly.
So Danielle, I have a question, hopefully a quick question for you.
Okay.
MS is an autoimmune disease. Do I remember that correctly? I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
Huh. Is there a lot of information online about burning out impacting that?
There is actually not a ton. One of the best resources, and I'm going to toot my own horn, one of the best resources that exist right now is things that I have on my website on burnout. Because this is a new area of study for us in the neurodivergent community, and there are only 2 medical studies.
Okay, is that, I don't want to tie up everybody else's time. Is that something does Laura know how to reach you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
Okay. And Jim, feel free to, Laura has my cell phone number. If you want to text me or call me and ask a million questions, I'm always happy to answer.
Thank you.
Please.
Yeah, because I definitely went through massive burnout right before they diagnosed me with MS. And I had read that to some degree, but it's taken me 5-6 years to come to grips with it because burnout was never in my vocabulary. It was only for weak people, and then it happened to me.
Yep. So the big thing that is a big problem for a lot of us that are neurodivergent, ADHD, autistic, ADHD, deaf, these are not moral. Being ADHD and all of the things that we struggle with ADHD and autism or whatever is not a moral failure or a sign of being weak in our faith or an evidence of being in sin or rebellion. These are all things that I personally have been told in church. And this is a scripture that comes up a lot when it comes to the disability community, from John. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the work of God might be displayed in him." There's always that conversation of, well, there must have been sin for you to be sick. There must have been sin for you to whatever. Well, yeah, we're fallen humans living in a sinful world. Yes, that's why we're sick, because we live in a sinful world. But that sin isn't necessarily attached to you. And this is a conversation that Tara and I had recently about her little brother being sick and having so many things. Was it because his parents were bad? Not necessarily. And churches handle physical disabilities. You see somebody in a wheelchair, you see somebody that's blind. They don't tell them to need more faith, that they should need more faith or whatever. But yeah, an ADHD kid or an autistic kid or an adult is told that our faith is the issue of why we can't sit still in the service. And like I said, some of these are directly from me. This is the small, I probably could have done 10 pages of the things that NDers have been told by believers. I kept it here. These are things that we have been told in church situations.
I like that. Stop being distracted. How do you? I mean, that's what a distraction is. Something takes your attention.
And this is also where things like Focus on the Family, Dr. James Dobson, was actually fairly harmful to the neurodivergent kids. The Strong-Willed Child book, man, don't get me started on that one. Because it was beat it out of your kid. Parents as a whole in the church were taught to beat the ADHD out of your kid. So we have a lot of generations of that strong-willed child discipline thing. Let me tell you, those of us that are neurodivergent will just dig in even more when that happens, and it's not helpful.
Oh, I don't know. I think that it must have worked because we didn't have anywhere near as many ADHD people back then as we do now. It was sarcasm, Allison.
I heard it.
You know, this is really kind of interesting, Danielle, because we have Brian here with us today, but Brian fell asleep, so I can speak. But you know, when it's starting out and having a child seizures and all kinds of things and that we'd gone through, we did have those people, you know, that, well, if you just have enough faith, you'll be healed and all those kind of things. But that kind of went away. But yes, I'm listening to all of this and realizing that people that have all of these things and all the time they're struggling inside their head and never finding peace within. I guess I'm really thankful I only have Brian. And Brian really is a pretty content, happy person. He really is.
No, maybe you never realized you learned it, you knew at a very, very, very young age of me that you didn't know it at the time, but in hindsight you would know that I was a different person right from I came out of the womb different.
Oh, yes.
But you didn't know that when I was, you know, until you started to have other kids or you started to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yeah,
you have other kids that are on spectrums.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, you and father learned the best thing you can do is hand me a shovel, hand me a hammer, have me run, have me do a job. And so you learned proper coping skills instead of beating it out of me or, you know, trying to get me to stay still or today drugging me. You know, those would have been things that any parent could have done at any time. And they would have just been justified for doing so. Right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but you put me alongside of Brian, and you say, well, you know, I was bearable compared to.
Well, it was
to that.
interesting because along comes Karen and she's just this really laid back, quiet person. It's like the thing that happened was that I had felt guilty all the time for this disruptive person, firstborn disruptive person. When Karen came along and she's quiet and everything, I thought, oh, good. It's not me being a terrible parent. It's just Mark being Mark.
Yep.
And taking the guilt away changed everything. Because then I could deal with Mark as a person and not with guilt. Dealing with Mark with guilt was a whole different matter. Just dealing with him as a person, you know, and then each of the children are all very different. So yeah, guilt was a huge issue there until.
So now we're trying to open that up with the whole church, and we all are the children and we all are the parent. How do we function with each other in love?
Well,
in truth and love.
You know, the thing is I keep listening to this, is actually all of us are needy, period, all of us.
Yeah.
And really, when you think in terms of the New Testament, if you take out all the organization of the church and you just think about Christians who are loving Christians and one another and accepting of one another, that's all it takes, is just to accept and love one another for who somebody is, their idiosyncrasies. And but
It's a little more than acceptance. It's asking, how can I help you?
Well, I mean, that's all relationship.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
I
I
think
go,
that's part of why I like to come here so much.
why?
I,
Why do you like to come here, Allison?
Well, one, because I like all of you, and two, I don't have to translate myself constantly to you guys.
You can be yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And we love you for who you are, you know?
well, Danielle,
and
I go even another step further. I think I didn't understand this, start to understand till it's been about a 6, 7, 8 year journey. But understanding that people are so different from us, you know, the Bible talks about love an awful lot. In fact, it's one of the top commandments, I would argue, could be argued. But understanding that people are so different has been a complete game changer for me, eye opener, and just blown away. Because I don't think, at least my generation where I grew up, I don't think we were taught this.
No, absolutely not.
They wasted a
Jim?
phenomenal amount of my time in school not teaching life skills and relationships and marriage and, you know, gender differences and, you know, traditional gender differences. There's another word, I can't think of it.
Vanity.
So Jim, put a little bit more flesh on that. Use pretend people that obviously we don't know. What would be some things where you have learned this character trait is different than you, or you had to learn, or however it applies to you.
Well, I've gone from being the guy that has zero patience, my way or the highway, get it done now, no tolerance for nonsense, no tolerance for, I don't know what you said, games or something, and Art mentioned traffic or something. That was me for decades. And now I've done on a 100, my life has done a 180-degree turn. And I have all the patience in the world. And I seek to understand people before I tell them how to do their lives and work for me and go on a mission trip and serve at church. And it's embarrassing.
So that begs the question. I'm sorry. There's a God story there. I'm sorry. I'm in the middle of everything here. Was there I think of Art and Danielle. There was a tipping point. There was something that changed them. Was there something or a specific time that changed you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's good when God does that to us. Sometimes we continue to struggle, and that's part of his process. He gets the glory for that too. Sometimes he does put us in those situations where he brings clarity and brings radical life change.
Better late than never, as they say.
Absolutely.
Well, Saul had it. He was a Christian killing man. Not Saul. Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy that became Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even myself, I know I've been going through a lot, learning a lot socially, a lot of lessons socially.
Okay. And that's you can see that with you. You're talking not just a certain thing in particular, but a period of life.
No,
Where-
just recently, this last
Oh.
like month.
Oh, okay.
So why do we
months?
all think we gotta fix people? Why can't we just let people be people? And not be us necessarily. And I think of Brenda, and I so bad wanted to get to know Brenda, but that girl had a wall. And I would go in for 10 minutes and we'd talk about pies, and then I would run the other direction. And it took me, I don't know how long, until she was one of my best friends. And we'd come and we'd sit and talk forever, but I knew to go in and to go hit her with an hour and a half, or let's whatever, it would never work. So I didn't try to fix her. you know, she was a hurting unit and she had her thing she was working on, and so we were just kind of built that. But why do we think we gotta fix
Well,
everybody?
it's difficult because scripture says to love one another. We're going to enter into their lives. You know, we were faced last week. I think we can handle the conversation. I realize it's probably fresh. Kara, you showed up at the end of our period last time, and we wanted to help you. Some of us would love to have fixed things, been in your place, done whatever we could to do, but we couldn't. And so that was one of those things where we have to love you from a distance. So being in relationship says, I want to do what's best, whatever that is. And I think whoever said it, Danielle Art, is asking the questions. What can we do for you? If you don't want to share or you're not ready, we haven't built a relationship, that's fine. But I think as believers, we're to function as one. I mean, when I broke my finger and my finger was sticking out the back of my hand, I didn't say to my hand, oh, I'm not going to fix you because that would be insensitive. I know my finger was killing my whole rest of my body and I needed to fix it. So it's just the natural way that we do it. But there is something else I think that we're talking about, and that's being intrusive into somebody's life and fixing something that we have no right in fixing.
Exactly.
And maybe there's better ways to say that, I'm sure.
Good.
But there's a dichotomy of where we do enter people's lives. We do want to fix them and help them. Guys are going to be better at fixing. Ladies are going to be better at empathizing, and that's all part of what's needed. But there's the other side of it where, you know what, if Art is being too quiet and we think we need to fix him, it's kind of a ridiculous thing, but I'm just saying,
Yeah, let him be.
yeah, let him be.
Yeah. Well, part of getting, we have to have time. Time is an essence to get to know people. And we are now living in a time when the world is going so fast that we don't take the time just to get to know somebody or to listen to somebody or to just notice, okay, all of a sudden they're real quiet. What's going on? I mean, the world is going too fast. And it has to almost be a very deliberate slowing down to say, what's going on with that person? Are they hurting? Are they happy? Do they want a friend? I don't know. I don't think you can, this kind of really knowing other people is not something that happens very rapidly. It's like to really know the value of another person is to come to really know them. One of the neat things I've learned over the years is if there's somebody who's very, very quiet, never talks or anything, and just doesn't. Well, if you become their friend, and it takes a while, and then they start talking, they got all the stuff that's been in there and they've been thinking, and oftentimes they are such rich people to get to know. But outwardly, and until you take the time just to, you don't know that's going to happen, but you just take the time of doing something with them occasionally, and all of a sudden, there it is.
Sure.
And
Okay. It's not just the time, it's the removing your expectations of what you expect to get out of that time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hard because when I come into things, even asking questions here, I usually have an agenda. I'm pulling people in. I'm looking to bring unity here. I'm helping people to grow. That's my gifting. So my giftings are functioning and doing what they do. Mother's going to do what she does. She encourages. Allison, she's been behind the scenes and she's been taking care of us with service needs while we sit here. And all of these things are functioning. So that's how we all function together. Allison, you had something that you were going to say.
Oh, I was just gonna say something that I learned recently about people was, I'm learning not to take what people say and do so personally. Because a lot of what people have to do, what people say and do towards you is more a reflection of how they're feeling
Excellent.
and
Mhm.
not anything to do with you at all.
Right. Yeah. You
Does that
just,
make sense?
yeah, sometimes you're just the person at the right or the wrong
Yeah,
time.
Does that make sense, Danielle?
Absolutely.
I think that speaks back to the rejection sensitivity
Yeah,
thing.
it
Is
does.
that you're perceiving a rejection that was never meant because you missed the social cue,
Yep.
that you just happen to be the person that they're talking to, and it's not a personal thing.
Mhm.
It's just something that comes up in conversation. And so don't think that it's necessarily something
Because I
negative.
would assume it's my fault.
Mhm.
Right.
Well, and that's a pattern recognition thing, Allison. We've had things like that happen enough because our communication is funky sometimes that we start to perceive that that is the pattern that we're in, even if we aren't.
That was a common denominator.
Right.
And I think going back to like, being silent, a lot of the neurodivergent community, we love talking. We'll talk for hours. But I think there's also a period where in the beginning, we are silent because we're scanning, we're analyzing, we're identifying like whether this is a safe space, so sometimes it's also having patience and for other people being uncomfortable with the silence because sometimes it's somebody's own internal process of, getting to the point where they can go from being silent to talking.
I know.
Yes, very much so.
I know. When Tara and I met, Tara and I hit it off immediately because we're both right at each other, over each other, and we're perfectly happy to do that we spent 3 days and 4 days together in Disney World, and I don't think we were silent at all ever the whole entire time.
I wasn't there, but I believe
Mm-hmm.
And then meeting Amy and being with Amy the first time we were in Amy's presence, I did a one-on-one with Amy, and it was very hard to get Amy to talk at first. And now Amy will come on a body doubling call or something, and she will ask me questions, and she'll start the conversation. It's just again not having expectations. Our expectations of how we think a conversation or a relationship with somebody should build or grow is a big thing. It's a very, very big thing. And there's our giftings, and we're going to get into giftings and stuff as we go further down through this. We're definitely not getting to that today. But understanding our giftings and how we operate is a huge part of understanding how we function as church. And I think that's something that the church is missing as a whole, because I will tell you, I heard of spiritual gifts. I've read the scripture on spiritual gifts, spent my whole entire younger years and teenagehood in church. Nobody ever explained to me what my spiritual gifts were or how to figure that out until I met Mark. And I was in my 30s by then, I think. Maybe.
late 20s.
Yeah.
That definitely was a pivotal teaching for our entire group. I don't need to know the answers. I'm just curious. Again, I don't need your answers other than just yes or no. Tara, Amy, do you know your spiritual gifts?
That'd be no.
That would be no's. When it's time, when we're going through our current study, which has been sidelined for a little bit, we will deal with that. And there's
It's
no
so simple.
yeah, it is
It's
so
so simple.
it's so simple. And those of us around you should be able to tell you that interact with you a little bit more than we do ought to know what your gifts are. So that's your future. We will find out what your gifts are. And it changes because we need to know what your gifts are because we need your gifts functioning. And so for the rest of us, we know what our gifts are and we depend upon them. Hey, if you need encouragement, there's some people you don't need to go to.
Mark and Art. Cross them off.
Yeah, if you need encouragement, do not talk to Art ever.
But if
Say that was stupid.
if Tara wants to know the intricacies of doctrine and stuff like that, you talk to Mark and Art. If you need practical help done because you're not functioning well this week, you get Allison, you get Rhonda, and you get Danielle. You need organization, you go to Danielle. See, we need to know what your gifts are so that we can all function. And you guys probably need a primer on what our gifts are and how they work, so that you can take advantage of them. You want encouragement when your house burns down, you call Mother. She finds a way to explain how great it is that your house just burned down and that your dog just died. And she's going to have you feeling really good about the whole situation. and it works. I don't know how, but it works. So I'm just saying. So yeah, I'm sorry, Danielle. I hijacked you again.
No, you're fine. So, any more questions? Because we are definitely done for today because there's a lot more to go.
I guess just by by going through this and because I've been in so many different churches when we moved with my husband in the military and even after we settled down. But yeah, I recognize that there's a lot of different types of people in the church. But I also recognize that some churches are so strictly organized that it leaves no room whatsoever for somebody that's even a little bit out of the norm at all, and it's like they just shouldn't be. And I guess I'd agree with the fact that as soon as you have a large organized church, it takes us all back to when we were in school and you had all the desks all lined up and you had to do things a certain way. I think schools have changed a little bit and they're not as bad that way now, but actually growing up, most of us have learned you have to toe the line. I don't know.
Amy, when Rhonda and I were in Bible school for the majority of the 4 years, we went to a church that was a little uppity. Wrong words. They were
a different class.
Yeah, they were different class. They were high class. Good socially. And we chose to be there. They were accepting of us somewhat. But when we walked in, we always felt that we were an object lesson.
Some worries.
Or, yeah, we had a street preacher that was not all there that I befriended. We felt that we were more on par with him than I think he lived on the streets. We were never totally accepted, but we chose to minister there, and they gave us places to minister. But we knew that we never belonged. We knew we never would belong. And we dealt with it. We knew we were there temporary. And I don't know, it was different. It was just different. And so finding our place, finding where we belong.
One of our moves, we went to Virginia, and I started looking for a church, and so I don't know, the first church I went to, everybody was in suits, including the teenagers, and I said, well, Mark will never come here, and then I went to the next church and the loudspeaker system was so loud, it's like it just about blew you out the back door. And it's like, well, I just can't tolerate that. I went to a different church the next week, and they were having some kind of contest with the teenagers, and whatever the teenagers had won, that if they did this, whatever, they could put a pie in the pastor's face. And I said, I'm coming here. Mark is gonna feel comfortable in this church.
He'll love it.
I mean, he was like 15, 16, I think, at that time. But it's like, yeah, there's a big difference in going to. I knew Mark could never go to this church where all the teenagers wore suits, because at that point Mark wore jeans and a flannel shirt, and he's not changed. He's been the same way since he was like, what, 13 years old, I guess.
Tara, what are you smirking at?
It's just funny. It's just fun.
I'm sorry that I'm so humorous. Yeah.
But at that same church though, we went to, and we'd left somewhere, and Mark was really lonely, lost a lot of good friends. And and I asked in the church if there was something he could do there. And they let him clean. You cleaned the church. Mark is very, very good at cleaning places. And so that gave him we were new there, you know, and he hadn't made friends and everything like that. So that church was really a good church in terms of my children finding a place to be. And so that really made a difference in terms for us as a church.
Danielle, I really, really, really